Stroke is a focal neurological deficit, which is of no other origin but cardiovascular in origin.
Depression is the leading cause of disability. Depression on its own is a persistent feeling of sadness, persistent feeling of hopelessness.
Hello viewers, welcome to this week's episode on Health Watch on Advent Cable Network Nigeria. I am Angela Mweze. 2 episodes ago, we had a discussion on gender-based domestic violence. We discussed from the medical point of view as well as from the point of a therapist. Today, we shall be learning a lot more on gender-based domestic violence. What to do if you find yourself in such a situation, and what is the position of the law with regards to gender-based domestic violence. Just before we meet our guests, let me remind you about the statistics. Gender-based domestic violence is a global problem that has in recent times assumed an alarming proportion. A study commissioned by the Nigeria's Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development and the United Nations Population Fund's UNPFA Nigeria found that 28% of Nigerian women aged 25 to 29 years have experienced some form of physical violence since age 15, while 25% of married women or those living with their spouses have experienced violence. Now, that simply means that on average, that you meet 4 women in Nigeria. 1 out of 4 of them have experienced some form of domestic violence. Just last year, during the COVID-19 compulsory lockdown, the Lagos State Domestic and Gender Violence Response Team reported that on average, it received 13 new cases daily. And in the month of March alone, it received 390 cases. And this excludes cases that were not reported by the victims. Let me say here, gender-based violence is not only against women, but also against men. The challenge is that there is very little study that have been done on the number of men facing this violence. Well, although I came across one study, but that study only reported that 87% of men agree that there is domestic violence against men. But the number of men who are experiencing or have experienced it, well, it's not well documented. I'm repeating these statistics because I want everyone watching today to know that gender-based violence is real. Somebody may be watching me right now who is experiencing violence, or knows somebody who is experiencing some form of gender-based violence. Or maybe you are watching right now and you are the violator. Whichever one you are, I want you to listen to the program today. I believe you will learn a whole lot. My guest on the program is Barrister Gladys Emmanuel. Barrister Gladys Emmanuel is a human rights lawyer and a gender advocate. Barrister Gladys, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Yes, we've been having a lot of chats before, before now on gender-based violence, and I know you do a lot of work on this. Just before I start knowing what gender-based violence, domestic violence, what have you is, let me just have an idea. What has the experience been like for you, working in this field, which I don't know if I can even attempt.
Okay, thank you so much, Angela, for having me.
Yeah.
I have a background in human rights law.
Okay.
However, nothing prepared me for what I encounter daily when I engage with the victims and survivors of various forms of gender-based violence. Some of them come in really battered. Some of them come in and they require psychosocial support, which is what we call psychological counseling, quote unquote, and some of them require rehabilitation. So it's a lot of learning for me. There's a lot of attention that needs to be given to these people, and there's a lot of attention that needs to be paid to gender-based violence. Gone were the days when we felt it was okay to batter someone or engage in female genital mutilation, known as FGM. Right now, there are lots of laws that are being implemented on a daily basis. There are lots of people being affected, both women, both men, both children. So for someone who works in the field, every day is a new chapter for me. Every day is a new story for me. And people might ask, so how do you cope hearing all of the stories?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. 'Cause I couldn't survive even one story, and I'm thinking how you deal with it.
How do you cope with this stories on a daily basis? And what I do is I try to take out myself and try not to be emotionally attached to a particular case, because at that point I'll be able to give an objective decision. I'll be able to really listen to this survivor, listen to this victim, and give out the attention they require or what they need to be able to deal with that particular situation and that particular point in time.
Wow.
So I try not to get my emotions all wrapped on, although some of them are very they're in a very deplorable state, some of the survivors, when you see them. But again, there's a point where I'm empathetic. It's not like, oh, I do not understand what you're going through. No, I try to get into their shoes and understand. But it's, again, I'm also very careful not to get myself too entangled that I will not be able to offer them the help that they require.
They need. So, wow. So your experience, because one thing I struggled with doing today is finding men, you know, what's it like? Do you have men coming to, you know, report? Because it's so difficult to find. Men believe it because, you know, until the last program, that was when I was corrected, that it's actually not only women. Women are still, men are also abused. So what has the experience been like? Is it balanced, or do you see more women, or are there men coming up, or what's going on? To be
honest, out of 100%, maybe 2% men.
Yeah, men.
The rest are women. And I think what's really happening is our society has so much indoctrinated the men to feel that you should have this form of ego. You're a masculine figure. You shouldn't be perceived or seen as one that will be battered by maybe a fellow man or a woman. So some of them, majority of them go through all of this. You could see this, but they prefer to keep to themselves because they need to uphold that pride that society has conferred on them.
Okay, maybe they don't even know what domestic violence is to even start with.
Okay.
So let's get to that. What's domestic? How would you define it? Or gender-based domestic violence? Okay. Let me be specific, because I'm careful with terms now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the term is actually gender-based violence.
Okay. Gender-based violence. Okay.
Yes. Okay. It's an umbrella term. Now, under gender-based violence, we have domestic violence, which is one arm of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So for domestic violence now, it's a form of violence that occurs in the home front or occurs between persons who are closely related. So we have spouses, we have siblings, we have mother to daughter, mother to son, sister to brother, uncle to niece, and all of that. So that group of persons that are closely related, the form of violence that occurs within that unit is known as domestic violence. Okay. Now, when we say domestic violence, for some people, what comes to their mind is, oh, the physical abuse that results in visible injuries. But it transcends beyond that. There is the psychological aspect of it. Okay. There's the emotional aspect of it. There's also a new one, which some people go through it, but they do not even know that they are victims of domestic abuse. And that is called economic deprivation. Now, I'm going to try and break.
Okay, that's what I want to, because I want to know where do you call it emotional. Because the one that is common is the physical. Like, definitely. They always say, everybody's okay, it's time for you to leave. If you're in a relationship, in a marriage. Oh, he's beating you. Leave the marriage. Why are you there? So there's emotional, there's let's
So the first one is physical abuse, which we know we could have someone slapping another person, someone biting, kicking, shoving another person, and all of that. There's the sexual aspect. Now, in some parts of the world, there's an offense known as spousal rape, which is rape that happens between spouses, people that are married. For some people, they'll feel like that's awkward. I thought, they are married, so they shouldn't be. But when we have issues that relate to sexual affairs, there is something called consent. Consent is very paramount.
Okay.
If a person says no, that means she or he hasn't given their consent. Silence should not be misconstrued for consent. The fact that he or she kept quiet doesn't mean they're actually consenting.
Okay, so because I want this to go for both parties now.
Yes.
So the importance of, in the case of rape, that's
Yes.
abuse in terms of rape, it means when you say no. So even if you're silent and the person is touching and doesn't say anything,
Silence
it's still
is
not
not
consent.
Yes.
Silence is not consent.
Yes.
So if the person is quiet, does not mean so you ask first before.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And okay, let's deviate a little bit. When it also comes to children or young persons, there's the Child Rights Act, which is present in Nigeria. Now, the Child Rights Act says, even if the child says yes, even if the child says no, if you go ahead to engage in any sexual activity with that child, you're deemed as an offender and you face the full arm of the law.
That's a minor, what you would
Yes,
call it. So what age,
minor
within what age does our law look at it? Let me just pull that out now.
For
Is it before
child's
18 or
rights,
before 16?
Before 18. The
Before
Constitution terms adulthood from 18.
Okay.
Although there are some discrepancies when we have the Marriage Act and some other acts where it says you can get married at so and so time. There are a lot of discrepancies,
Okay.
but what we stick to is age 18.
Okay.
Which is this age of adulthood.
Okay. That's in case you're not married before that age. I know some parts of the country people marry very
Definitely.
early. Yes. So from between age 1 and 18, if you have any form of intercourse with that person within that age, it's an offense.
Definitely.
In the law. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
So the next is psychological abuse.
Okay.
Now some people go through this form of abuse and they do not even know. When you have a spouse or family member who constantly batters you with their words, tell a person they're good for nothing, they're worthless, they're fat, they're ugly. Now, those things, for us, it might just be, it doesn't really matter. But what those words are doing is they're gradually eating up your self-esteem. And in no little time, sooner than later, we'll discover that those people affected by that actually say, perhaps I'm really worthless. Perhaps I do not amount to anything. That is a form of violence. That's a form of domestic abuse.
So because this might go both ways for both male and female.
Definitely.
So if your wife is always, because I'm trying to be very
Balanced.
to be a bit balanced, you know. So if you have your wife, because the physical one is always sometimes difficult to say if a woman will be beating her husband. But I don't know if it's happening, but well, let's assume it happens. But the emotional one seems to be the one that might be of the psychological one will be very obvious. So if the woman is always telling you nothing, especially when he's lost a job or something, and you know, okay.
Then we have economic deprivation. We must have come across, or most people come across, a particular person who was working before they got married. Perhaps the man or the woman, but mostly the women. You get married and then he's like, I do not want you to work. I do not want you to start up a trade. I just want you to sit down at home and take care of the home and take care of the children. If it's what both of them want, that's totally fine. However, sometimes this is not what the other party wants.
Okay.
And we also have situations where all of this is geared towards controlling the other person. Now you see that this person lacks financial independence because she or he has stopped working and they're depending solely on this other person for their daily living. And in the event that there is a minor misunderstanding or a major misunderstanding, one way this perpetrator uses to punish this other person is to withdraw every financial help. So you discover that this other person, whether or not they like it, they just need to sway to this person's decision or this person's ideology because, I mean, they need a means of livelihood or something to sustain their daily living. So those are the types of domestic abuse we have.
Okay, so just to know that it's not just physical.
No.
Yeah, it could be psychological, which is the same as emotional, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it could also be economical.
Economic deprivation.
So you're depriving that person of what empowers them.
Exactly.
So basically it's a way of pulling down another person.
It's a way of dominating another person. It's a control tool used. And society has so exalted it that it feels okay. They feel masculinity should rule over one particular gender, which shouldn't be really. Like, I mean, all human beings are equal and the same under the law, whether international law or domestic legislation. However, society has another message to pass, which is this should be up here and this other should be somewhere here or below, which shouldn't be at all.
Okay, we'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the law and what somebody who is in such a situation should do. You know, how do you get redress? How do you get help when you're in such a situation? All right, viewers, we'll be right back.
When one is horrible, it means that there is nothing that is objectively good and progressive that will come out of such individual.
If you have been convicted of an offense before and you have been pardoned, and anybody is trying to bring that up against you and calling you a convict, you have the power to sue that person for defamation.
Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen by all to have been manifestly done.
Every citizen has a right and every citizen has an obligation.
That a plea of ultra-virus acquit or convict is very different from the plea of pardon.
Trespass is that act that interferes with the peaceful,
no matter how minute,
no matter how minute.
Who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
Welcome back, viewers. Before we went on the break, we were discussing gender-based domestic violence, and my guest is still Barrister Gladys Emmanuel, and she's a human rights lawyer and a gender advocate. Barrister Gladys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for. I think I'm getting it well now. So let's discuss the legal part. Now, somebody has listened and has seen that everything you're saying seems to look like what I'm going through. Especially the physical one. Where do you start? Do you just walk to the police station, or what do you do first? How do you seek help when you find yourself in this kind of situation, male or female, just to be clear on that?
All right, thank you so much, Angela. Lately, we've had a rise in the number of non-governmental organizations that are starting off crusades on issues of domestic violence or gender-based violence, as the case may be. So most definitely you should have one in your community. However, they're usually the best point of call, to be honest, because sometimes they have what you need, all the officials you need, such as a therapist, a psychologist, and they can also do referrals. So they help you take care of the extra documentation and having to face law enforcement and just try to make your complaints. So they're more like forerunners or frontline officers, if you like to call them that. But in the event that an individual doesn't have those organizations in their community, what they can do is they could go to the nearest police station and lay in complaint. But depending on the severity of the matter, if it's one that is life-threatening, my best bet is you approach the police station and lay a complaint, and they would be able to guide you accordingly. However, we also have some government agencies that help out. So we have the likes of National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Person, known as NAPTIP.
NAPTIP,
Yes, so NAPTIP also helps out with cases of domestic abuse, regardless of the age. We also have, if one needs to seek legal redress and they do not have sufficient funds to do that, they could approach National Human Rights Commission. Or another organization, an international organization, is International Federation for Women Lawyers, otherwise known as FIDA.
FIDA.
Yes. So FIDA also offers free or pro bono legal services to victims and survivors of domestic abuse. But again, in my experience as one who's worked in this field, one thing that is always paramount, or one thing that we always see every time, is that sometimes these victims or survivors come to report these cases. However, they do not want to follow it up to the latter. So you find out that the culture of silence is prevalent in some communities. You find out that because they want to keep the image of their family intact and do not want members of the public to know what is happening, they prefer to just make a complaint because they feel immediate pain at that point, or they're very upset at that point because of what had just happened to them. But after that, when you tell them, okay, so we've taken down your statement, we're going to refer you to so and so agency, or we're going straight to the police station, and then we'll charge the perpetrator to court, you discover that they recoil to their shell. They are not willing to pursue further. This does not apply for everyone, though. But I mean, in my work, about 30% of the victims or survivors I've encountered, they follow this narrative. So it's one thing to identify that this person is a victim of domestic abuse. It's another thing for that person to really want help.
All right.
Yes.
Now that's now a bigger one. If the person really needs help.
Yeah.
So the first thing to do, so does the victim need to gather some form of evidence? Or
so that's usually the job of whatever agency organization they are going to. For instance, if it's a case of rape, what they advise them to do is you go to a government-owned hospital and you run a test. Now, that test is usually used as evidence and it's going to be tendered in court. If there are other circumstantial evidence, such as maybe a cloth that was torn forcefully, or a forceful entry into the house, or there are pictures or physical bruises, or there are witnesses, now all of those things come in handy. And sometimes it's usually the job of the witness, or the job of the law enforcement, or the job of the organization that's handling, and also the job of the survivor or the victims themselves. So it's a collective effort. It's not just because you're affected by this, it's your duty to get us everything we need. No, because sometimes when you meet these victims or survivors, they're in a broken state. They can't even get themselves together and begin to narrate everything that's happened. So you need to give them time. And all of these agencies, organizations come together to ensure that the perpetrator faces the full arm of the law.
Okay, so if you're a victim or you're going through that, you can walk into any of this office, and there'll be somebody there, or a department or something to attend
to you. Now, some of these organizations have phone lines that you could call. In the event of NAPTIP, they do evacuation. If it's like a very threatening situation, they could do an evacuation and take the victim or the person in that particular state out of that environment, while they figure out how to ensure that the perpetrator doesn't escape the full arm of the law. So it depends on which scenario we're looking at.
So in very bad situation where it is the abuse is much and life-threatening, you can go to the police.
Definitely.
But if you're already a victim who you know that this is what you've been going through, then you can go to some of these agencies or the NGOs to help out. You know.
And if it's like, I'm sorry to cut you short, if it's like late at night, for instance, midnight, 11 p.m., where you know that some of these organizations have closed from work, the best point of call is the police station.
The nearest police station.
Exactly.
And if you're not received well in some of the reality is that some of our police stations are not, some of them might not even take you seriously, you know, especially if you're a married woman and you walk to the police station and you tell them, oh, my husband just raped me. I'm sure they will say, madam, go and beg your husband.
Exactly.
You know.
They call it family matter.
Which I don't think they also need their own training on how to fix this matter. So you go to the police, if you don't get that call, still move ahead to the NGOs.
Yes. Now, some of these NGOs, just like the one I work in, we have what is called a pro bono lawyer scheme. Now, this is a group of lawyers that attend to these cases free of charge. They do not collect a dime from these women because some of those women can't really pay for the services. So what they do is sometimes they offer these legal services physically or they do it virtually. So for us, for instance, in my organization, we have this survivors work into the organization and we book a session for them. Now, it's not every case of domestic violence that goes to court.
Okay.
Yes, some of them can be settled through a mechanism called alternative dispute resolution. Now, we get both parties together and we try to wade in both legally and through the psychological aspect by counseling them. But if it's one that's life-threatening, if it's one that's continuous, if it's one that's beginning to affect the welfare of the children, then we advise that we take it a bit further. At this point, ADR might not really help them.
Okay.
We might need to charge this person to court, especially if it's a case of rape, or this person has been severely battered physically, or there's continuous threat to life. We've had women who says, my husband walked up to me this morning and says, if you do not leave this house, I am going to kill you. Now, at that point, ADR doesn't work.
You need to.
Yes, you need to go to the police station, or you need to go to one of these organizations to help facilitate the case that he could approach any of these government agencies and they make him sign an undertaking. And sometimes they detain those perpetrators since they're a continuous threat to the existence of the survivor.
Okay. So now let me even move a little bit and see with the minors. I know we're talking to women, but I'm just feeling minors. Some could be 16 watching and asking, do I still take the same process of walking into an NGO, going to the police station to report if I've been a victim of maybe even rape, which is part of in the whole domestic violence? What do children do? Well, young minors, below 18. What do you
So for
advise?
children, I would advise they walk up to an NGO. Now, the good thing with most of the programs rolled out by these NGOs is that they are beginning to embark on projects called School Drive.
Okay.
Now, the School Drive ensures that information about domestic violence, how to access justice, who to speak to, how to get counseling, rehabilitation is provided for them. So if you go to some of the schools, there's always a directory where you could contact some of these organizations.
Okay.
So they could contact these organizations directly, or sometimes some neighbors are that kind to report. And with the new law in Nigeria known as the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, otherwise known as the VAPE Act, the VAPE Act allows for proxy reporting of cases of domestic abuse.
Okay.
So I am not affected, but my neighbor's son is affected or my neighbor's daughter is affected. I could pick up the phone and call, or I could go report to the police on behalf of this person. Or I could take this person to the hospital to get treatment, and then we follow it up from there.
Oh, right. Okay. So there's something like that. So which means neighbors can help.
Yes.
Friends can help.
Exactly.
People that are
Lately, we've had clergy who help to report on behalf of their church members, on behalf of, their followers. I've gotten a couple of calls from some clergy who says, oh, a church member or a follower is going through this and this. How can they access justice? How can they get help? And then we book an appointment for them and they come in and we take it up from there.
Okay, so even the churches, the pastors can help. You can just report. Because sometimes it's not just advice. Let us beg him, let us plead with him, or just be patient. That wouldn't cut it. So sometimes, drastic measure. And if you don't have the authority to do it, you can also, reach out to. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a good one that I'm finding out. Then just quickly, before we're going to go on one more break. And the perpetrator, the person doing it, what's the law on this person?
Okay.
No, I don't want to get...
So there are lots of measures that can be taken. They have the likelihood of being sentenced to prison.
Okay.
Yes, they could pay fine, which is usually prescribed by the court, or they could serve both of them, depending on the severity of the matter.
Okay.
So now imprisonments could span from 7 years to life imprisonment, depending on, because of course we know that some people die from cases of domestic abuse. So once someone dies, we know that it's a capital offense and the perpetrator might spend life. So would spend life. So.
But we'll go on a quick break, and when we come, we'll discuss the other parts of this program. But thank you. I've learned so much today from this discussion. We'll be right back, viewers.
Now streaming, now analyzing. now assessing, now discussing, now sharing your thoughts on everything and every issue that affects you. ACNN's Now Streaming discusses the issues trending and the matters that matter to us all. Join us every Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. on ACNN as we go in depth into every issue that impacts our lives, our communities, and our country.
Welcome back, viewers. Barrister Gladys Emmanuel, a human rights lawyer, and we're still discussing gender-based domestic violence. Thank you. Thank you so much, Barrister Gladys. So now, we've talked about the law, and I'm happy there's something you can do. It's not just, in as much as we know that this violence, domestic violence, gender-based violence is real, there's something that can be done. There are people who are speaking, people like your organization, that are speaking up on that. And towards the end, I'd like to hear a little bit about what your organization is doing. But, is this laws applicable to every part of the country? Because I know this station is being viewed by almost everybody part of the country. So does it apply the laws and does it apply to the whole country?
So for now, the only law that applies to the entire country is the Constitution, which is known as the ground norm. However, the Constitution doesn't really deal with specifically issues of domestic violence. All it says is it prohibits discrimination, torture, inhumane treatment. However, it doesn't specifically call it out as it should be. So we have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which was enacted under the administration of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan in 2015. Now, this is one of the most progressive piece of legislation or laws we've had in recent times that addresses issues of violence, or not just domestic violence, now violence as a whole, because it goes further to give more definition to like the offense of rape. It also talks about those who are accessories to this crime. It talks about even if you're an onlooker, like you're supposed to warn people, or your job is to try and lure this person in, there is a punishment for that person. Unfortunately, out of 36 states in the country, about 23 have implemented this particular law into their local legislation. Now, the major part of the country, which is the northern part, which is unfortunately where we have these cases prevalent, have refused to adopt this law into their local legislation. So it means that a part of the country is functioning with one law, and the other part of the country is functioning with a different law. So there's no balanced treatment in addressing issues of domestic violence and issues of gender-based violence as a whole. Although states like Lagos State, Ebonyi State, Ekiti State, Cross River have done a lot, and Abuja have done a lot when it comes to addressing issues. In fact, I give it to Lagos State. They've done a lot. They've gone way ahead in addressing these issues. However, because these states have different laws, so it's not really balanced how to treat this survival, how to address the perpetrator. So there's no single law that cuts across all parts of the country to properly address issues of gender-based violence. That is why we have this treatment is different. This state is silent. This state is speaking up. There's so much advocacy in this state, and there's nothing happening in this other part of the country.
So it has more to do with the people, their culture, and their religion. And
exactly. Religion plays a huge role, especially for states that have the Sharia law. Now, they go by Sharia law. So some of the things that the Vape Act is talking about is something they do not want to have anything to do with. For instance, the penal code is operational in the northern part of Nigeria. I think section 25 of the penal code allows the husband to use whips on his wife as some form of corrective measure when she errs. Now, yes, So when we have the Vape Act talking about we do not want any form of violence, here is saying in the event that your wife acts in this way, you can whip her. So long as you do not leave any physical bruises, or you do not blind her, or you do not make her incapacitated, sort of. So you see the discrepancies in our legal system in this part of the world.
This is something else. I mean, you would think that by now, in 2021, everybody is all hands on deck. Let's stop abusing each other. And there's a part that doesn't even want to hear about it.
Exactly.
Well, I hope one day we'll get by this. I just hope one day, as the advocacy keeps going.
Positive.
We just, that's all, we just hope. We just hope it goes. But I'm so happy that you've said that. But at least for the ones that are where it's allowed, where the law has permitted, then they should go ahead and seek help.
Definitely.
The minute they experience any form of. Now, I want to keep saying it, male, female. I've been corrected several that it's both male and female. And then the culture of silence for the men, maybe this masculinity, the men don't want to speak up. Because others might laugh at you. A guy, you're a guy. Why are you staying and a woman is doing this to you? But I think no matter who you are, seek help. And then you get the help. I'm sure you get the help. So I want to talk about, just briefly from your experience, because I know you've done this a whole lot and you're so experienced in it. What do you advise a lady or a man to look out for from another person to avoid this kind of madness? That's all I can call it.
Okay.
Because it always has the signs.
Sure
I don't think
we just ignore them.
Yeah, I don't think the abuser starts suddenly.
It's not. And for me, when I describe or define domestic violence, I say it's premeditated.
Yeah,
and sure
I don't think it's sudden.
And it's a continuous act. So sometimes some people carefully craft out this, and then they unleash. So for your questions, the signs. For a lady, for a guy out there, there are lots of red flags to look out for. When one person is aggressive, that's usually a sign. We all have our temperaments, no doubt.
Yeah.
But when it goes out of control, that they begin to pick up objects and slam them at you or slam them on the wall, then that's a red flag you might want to take note of.
Even when they come back to apologize and say, I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter. Abusers always come back to apologize too. Then when someone makes some funny comment about you every once in a while, you're trying to have maybe what we call a big break in your life. There is this idea you've gotten, there is this part of you or part of your profession or your career you want to explore, so that you get to that next level, and the person kind of withers it down. That at the end of the conversation with them, you feel like, you know what, it's not worth it. You should look out for that. That's psychological abuse playing out right before your eyes. Or I do not really support when you're dating someone, for instance, and you depend on them for your financial upkeep and all of that. But if someone willingly does that, why not? But if at every time you people have a misunderstanding and he withdraws that, that's a red flag. That's economic deprivation staring at you in the face. You might also want to look at that. Or someone who tells you, maybe you've had this friends for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and he's like, or she's like, I do not want to see you with this person. Not because their character is bad, but I just do not feel very comfortable. I don't want to see your sister coming here. I don't want to see your family. Why are you always calling your mom? Why are you always calling your dad? You might want to look out for it, because this is a tool that is used every now and then by perpetrators. They try to cut a person, an unsuspecting victim, away from any link that will offer help to them, so that at the end of the day, it's just them and the victim, and they thoroughly deal with them. So when someone is trying to cut you off vital relationships, you might also want to watch out for that.
You're cutting out your family and friends and people that will
offer you help
when you become, Yeah, because the signs are always there. We
True.
get to see them.
True.
It happens.
But sometimes we just ignore them.
Ignore them and think it's just okay. Yeah, yeah.
Or we've heard, we've heard the funny ones where some people say, oh, I do not want to, maybe, for instance, you're trying to, like a man and a woman are trying to get married, and of course we know the norm is you need to go to the hospital to get tested for a couple of things, and then he tells you or she tells you, no, why do you need to know all of that? Why are we doing exactly? You need to trust me. Why do we have to do a HIV test? Why would we have to do an STD test? You need to be very careful. That is controlling technique playing out,
or hiding family from you.
Exactly.
Hiding themselves, not wanting you to know about them.
Sure.
You know, they're looking for an opportunity to come in.
Very correct. And you can't have a civil conversation with that person without the roof coming down. That's
then
also
you should start watching
a sign.
Character. And people also have this problem. You know, if you notice you have the problem, you should look for help.
True.
Because that's
therapy.
Look for therapy. I'm not very patient to start trying to tell the perpetrators, but if you find yourself in that situation and you're being violent, and I think you should go find help.
Especially one who is who has witnessed a vicious circle of violence. They call it intergenerational violence.
Okay.
Where, for instance, we have children who grew up in a home saying their dad hit their mom or their mom hit their dad. They grow up and feel like that is the norm. If you fall into that category, it's nothing to be ashamed of, but you need to seek therapy so that you do not continue that vicious circle.
Because somehow you don't know that it's in your mind. It's played in your mind and it's existing somewhere. Maybe you're telling yourself, I won't do this, but what you don't know is you're playing what you see as opposed to what you tell yourself. All right. Well, let's talk about your NGO and what you do, because I really want to know, and I think I have viewers that might want to contact if they need help and all of that. Yeah. So tell us a bit about, your NGO and what you do.
Okay, so I work with a non-governmental organization known as Tabitha Empowerment Center.
Okay, Tabitha.
We're a non-governmental organization and not-for-profit organization that are geared towards eliminating domestic violence. We also provide welfare services for indigent widows and orphans in the society. Now, part of our thematic areas include advocacy, which is what I'm doing right now, awareness creation and sensitization. So sometimes we go to these villages, we try to engage with women and try to engage with men and children, or we go to schools or churches to just keep talking about issues of domestic violence. We also do psychosocial support and rehabilitation. So when these people come in, there is no domestic violence survivor whose life is ever the same. So there's a need for intensive therapy. You need to get them out of that place they are. So that's where we have rehabilitation and psychosocial support coming in. We also do welfare services, like I've explained, and of course sheltering. But sheltering is on hold for now until we'll let the general public know when we're open for that. So our office is in Jukoi in Abuja, and we have a functional website, www.tabithaempowermentcenter.com.ng, tabithaempowermentcenter.com.ng.
Okay.
Yes, and for our cell phone lines, you could reach us on 080-3300-9889 or 081-190-1203. We're also present on Instagram, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn.
Okay, so call that first number again. So that
080-3300-9889.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can call the Tabitha
Empowerment
Center.
And our phone lines are open 24 hours every day, 7 days a week. However, we do not work on Saturdays and Sundays, but we always do referrals.
Okay, referrals. When you call, so you can be contacted for help, because somebody could be watching who needs, help with with the issues that they have, with issues that they are having. But I'm really, really elated that you came on the program today.
Thank you
and I have
so
learned so
me.
much about domestic violence. It is an issue a lot of a lot of it. And if we don't stop it now, we don't know how far this one day we might have so many broken women all over the place, and families from broken homes that are all over the place. So I really congratulate you, for what you do and much you're passionate about it. And I really pray that, you get to higher heights.
Thank you. Amen.
To speak to, bigger platform. And I think I see you there, speaking of bigger platforms, this. And thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank
we have
you.
learned so much today. And just in case you didn't get the information from the Tabitha Empowerment Center, please, you can see the website is www.tabithaempowermentcenter.com.ng. And the phone lines you can contact them is 08131901203. Please call. Remember, it's 24 hours, 7 days a week, but they don't work weekends. They only make referrals on the weekends. So please call if you need help, and let's get help and get a solution to this problem.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I can't thank you.
you.
I think this thank you has been thank you. And do you know that you're the first guest on this program? I think, who is not a medical doctor.
Oh, really?
Because it's a health,
this is
health
great.
program. It's a health program. So we and then I think maybe the third lady or fourth lady. We don't have lots of ladies on the program. So it's exciting to see have a lady on the program, and somebody who's not a medical doctor. So it's good to have it. And just for our viewers, the reason we had to do this was to educate our viewers on the areas of the law, how you can seek help. You can go to the medical doctor and get treatment and get all those corrections, but how you get from the law, how you get help is what we wanted to address today, and I believe we got that sorted. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, viewers, for staying with us for the past few minutes. I've been speaking to Barrister Gladys Emmanuel. She's a human rights lawyer and a gender advocate. I believe you have learned a whole lot today. We might not talk more about this domestic violence, but next week we'll talk about something else. But please, you can call the numbers or check the website and see how you can get help. Please don't die in silence. Don't stay in silence. Silence empowers the perpetrators. Silence empowers them. So get all the information you can get, and then get all the help you can get. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you next week. I am Angela Wednesday. Goodbye.